Moving on to our last panel discussion for the day on impediments and barriers to creating IT metrics that matter to the executive leadership. Quickly introducing our subject matter experts on this subject. We start with our eminent moderator, Engineer John Morton, Enterprise Architect and Data Governance Expert, Digital Transformation, CPM. Mr. Mohammed, Viqaruddin, Vice President, Education, Bahrain, IT Professionals, Toastmasters Club. Mr. Raje, Director and CIO, HealthAssure. And Mr. Ravi, Bhaisare, Head Cloud Transformation, Reckitt. Over to you, John, to moderate the panel.
That's great, thank you. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
It just looks as though I've gone frozen at this end. So,
well, I think Mr. Shalin is still sharing his screen. Mr. Shalin, if you could, stop screen sharing. Thank you. Right, John.
Anyway, thank you very much for introducing our illustrious panel. And I think what we'll do is we'll go straight into getting each one of them to introduce themselves. If you'd like to just consider, your experiences in cloud shared platforms and what industries you're representing, I think that will help the audience key into listening to who's got the most relevant information for them. Can we start with Ninad?
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be a part of this summit and particularly this elite panel. Thanks for inviting us. My name is Ninad Raje, and I am a part of the healthcare industry associated with HealthAssure for a long time. Collective experience of almost around 26 plus years, of which have been a part of various industries, starting from and ranging from financial institutes to insurance to banking and technology, and now, of course, the healthcare sector as well. From the cloud standpoint, I have been a part of this entire cloud journey and association for almost like 10 plus years now. So hopefully should be able to provide particular insights to this particular forum and to our audience as well. Back to you. Thank you so much.
That's great. Ravi, perhaps you could give us a bit of your background.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. And this is Ravi Bhaisare, and I'm head of cloud transformation, SAP for Reckitt. About Reckitt, most of you would know that it's a British multinational consumer goods company headquartered in Slough, England, and it is a producer of health, hygiene, and nutrition products. And obviously, it is home to some of the well-known brands like Dettol, Lysol, and all. Now, as a part of this role, I'm responsible to migrate overall infra and applications onto the public cloud of choice, which is Azure. And I'm glad to announce that one of the major cloud migration on Azure of SAP is something which we had achieved just within a month, right? I mean, the last month, I would say. In my previous roles, specifically, I've worked with a number of CPG organizations as well as the IT giants back in India. So I worked in Marico, Accenture, Cognizant, and working close to business and solving their problem is something which I like to do. I've worked on the RPAs, chatbots, AMLs. That's something which is very handy to me as well. And truly excited to be part of this panel and among the esteemed panelists. I'm looking forward for the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. And Mohammed, give us a little bit of insight about you and your background.
Thank you, Mr. Panel Moderator, Mr. John. And I got an opportunity to be a part of this panel topic, which is impediment and barrier to creating IT metrics that matter to executive leadership. It's my honor to be a part of this panel discussion. My background, I'm an IT professional. Since my Microsoft certificate is mentioned since 99. So I have vast experience in the IT, and our organization, when I transformed the cloud native and make them to be available, and I have experience mainly on infrastructure, cloud, and making the transformation from the native data centers to the cloud. The main role for me to migrate workloads from the data center to the cloud. That's it from my side, and more information I will share during my term will come. Thank you, and back to you, Mr. John, our panel moderator.
Okay, and a brief bit about myself. I've been around creating and putting in place data center and shared services platforms for probably too long than I can really remember. Moving lots of applications into that and application consolidation, as well as creating new financial models around how do you manage, control, operate data center shared services in the cloud and of course on premise. Most recently, the TASMU project in Qatar to put together their smart country platform. I spent a year and a half on that. And then more just this year, I've been looking at smart factories for one of the largest, well, the leader in their area within manufacturing. So that gives me a deeper insight into some of the challenges on edge computing. So there we are, audience. We have our panel of experts. So let's get cracked on with the first question. In moving from on-premise environments to the cloud, is there a need to have different or new metrics? Why do we need to change? Mohammed, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Panel Moderator. I think some issue with my camera. I will share my thought. Yes, of course, the main purpose of moving a cloud, first of all, the organization, they want to be made stabilized. And number two, they want to make their platform to be globalized and easily reachable. As far as I know, where I work, we need a local vendor support. We need to buy an order. Getting a server will take maybe 5 to 6 months. And during this cloud environment, we don't need that kind of process. We can get instantly as when we need it, and only we need to control the system. How do you want to make yourself? That's it from my side, and back to you, our panel moderator.
Okay, Ravi.
Hey, John. On the same question, I think, see, here is what I feel. So on-premise, you have your various measures that normally you tend to do, right? You want to manage your infrastructure. You want to measure your infrastructure performance. You want to see how your infrastructure is performing, as well as how the financial or matrices are working, right? While the sole purpose of, not the sole purpose, one of the main purpose of migrating onto the cloud is to make sure that you have a lower TCO, right? So from the finance ops side of it, if you don't measure, how are you faring against the goal with which you have migrated onto the cloud? It becomes very difficult to justify the business case that through which you have mobilized on cloud, right? At the same time, given that public cloud, your servers will be lying somewhere. Now, it should not degrade the overall performance of the earlier application, which was pretty much on-premise, right? So how do you measure the performance of the application, and it is giving the same or a better level of performance to the end consumer or users of those applications. That's pretty much important. So to answer to your question, yes, it is very important to have a different matrices in place while we migrate from on-premise to on-cloud, because on-cloud has its own flavor and its own purpose, and that purpose can only be met if you measure it, and then only you can improve it.
Okay, thank you, Ravi. And Ninad, what's your perspective, especially your healthcare experience?
Thanks, John, and thanks for my colleagues out here to draw the attention towards the points. Well, as more organizations adopt a cloud approach, they need to consider the multifaceted nature of cloud migration. There are numerous metrics one can use to sort of evaluate success. While developing a strategy, one need to keep in mind which metrics are more important and appropriate for a specific company. There are a few metrics that I would want to sort of elucidate as well. There are 7. I'll just quickly go through each of these 7 for the benefit of the audience. First, of course, is the cost. One needs to look at the cost element as well. Many businesses, of course, are drawn towards cloud technology for its convenience and cost. However, there are some expenses to the process that data transfer rates. Now, before a company begins a migration project, the supervisors and the managers must consider the cost of applications, redesign, and their dependency mapping as well. Now, once the migration process commences, monitor expenses related to billing, staffing, and any third-party management resources. Keeping track of these expenses allows one company sort of to compare them against on-prem infrastructure costs and determine the financial impact of transitioning to the cloud. So that's very, very important. The second element is time, and many companies must also calculate how much time is it necessary to complete your migration project. Before you begin a process, estimate how long activities in each phase will take, inputs, outputs, and other operational considerations and measurements as well. Now, these metrics can indicate very crucial techniques and data points needed to help migration more efficient. Third being business interference, that's very, very important. And then, of course, you're talking about governance as well. A proper governance plan is very crucial for a long-term success and scalability. Now, once a company has assessed the developed governance framework to ensure and preserve the most vital information, which is data, that's when the migration should start. And most importantly, it's infrastructure. Applications and systems that originate on premises may not work as well as they have worked on the cloud environment. Now, that's why the organizations need to develop infrastructure measurements to gauge the performance of this hardware and the network, including in the cloud. Now, for example, just a crude example here, metrics for disk performance, memory usage, and CPU usage can really efficiency across multiple areas, And then, of course, you talk about the user experience that has to be spot on. It has to be wow. It has to be delightful, both from the external usage perspective also and the internal users as well. And last but not the least, I just wanted to kind of point towards security. Nowadays, when we talk about cloud, the security comes into a picture. And of course, we all know cyber attacks continue to plague our industry, technology departments, and so on and so forth. So it's very pertinent and important that once we plan for cloud migration, security has to be of prime importance. And of course, these are all the challenges which are sort of existing, and there are certain solutions available to those as well. So that was just a precursor to what you had requested, John. I hope it addresses your question. Or back to you, John.
No, thank you for that. And that's quite a good summary of all the challenges about moving to the cloud environment. I think the only thing I could add to that and add to everybody's comments is around managing the cloud once you've actually established the new systems on there. So typically I try and turn that back into, what is the business productivity gains? What does that do to reduction of administration effort? And I think somebody talked in one of the earlier things about, just keeping all your information in one place, knowing where that information is, and putting the right security and data controls around. It actually reduces an awful lot of that administration that might be happening across the business. So I think there is a new need for IT metrics. I think it's more important to manage and monitor the security, the access controls, and the connectivity issues. Because you're moving to a sort of a thinner client within your endpoints, you then need to have a way of managing and assuring that not only the services is available, but the content and quality of communications to that service point remains at an appropriate level. So thank you. Any additional points in having, since we've gone through the first time?
So John, I think very well put up by Ninad and yourself, right, Mohammed as well. So see, probably what we could also do, given that's the panel and we want to make sure that our audiences understand it, right? We can also categorize these various matrices into two different categories. That's my way of looking at it, right? One can be called as the fundamental matrices, like Ninad said, the cost metrics or the finance metrics, right? Or application and service cost, right? That's normally we tend to measure what is our IT spend versus plan, right? Both in either application or service. And in terms of project, right? Whether you are doing a cloud migration project or any other project which is running under your organization, what's your delivery matrice looks like, right? I mean, how many projects that you are delivering and all that. On the flip side, the transformational matrices, when we talk about what's the percentage of IT spend that you are spending on cloud, right? How your innovation and agility matrices look like. So these are the new matrices, and of course the security and cyber. And one of the, just before joining this particular panel discussion, I think we heard about the ESG, right? What is your carbon footprint reduction that's happening? All those new matrices can come in, can become part of your measurement. I think it's a pretty vast area once we migrate ourselves onto the cloud.
I think you're right. I think you are. So I think we'll move on to the next set of questions. And Ravi, I think I'll direct this one at you initially. So what are the key IT metrics relevant in current times, or perhaps in your environment, that help IT executives and your teams to understand and communicate the impact?
Correct. I think again, I would simply call it out like, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So you'll have to have some measures which can tell you how you can improve. Now, from IT as a broad spectrum, it looks at all the aspects of IT, not just cloud. Cloud is being one of the elements. But as I was talking earlier, we can put up those fundamental matrices and transformational matrices. For myself, if I have to really say for the executives to measure IT matrices, so definitely how are they faring against the Capex and OPEX that they have decided for a specific period, isn't it? So that becomes a fundamental matrix. And how are we doing against the cost that we have accepted to spend? One of the key fundamental matrices which I would like to emphasize on is on the customer experience, or how's the satisfaction, whether it is an inward customer, that is our employees, or the external customer to whom we are serving or selling the product, how their experience has been. So this is one of the fundamental matrices that we need to put in. And on the other side of it, as in, you are going to a new digital era and you want to bring in the new age technologies, right? And you want to make sure that there are business-led IT initiatives that you are taking. Now, are we as an IT organization and IT executive board, are we able to achieve the business outcome that we have set up for ourselves at the beginning of the program, right? Or beginning of the initiative. So this is one of the key matrices to tell whether our investments are giving us the fruit that we have initially agreed upon or not. And this should be a combined or joint effort in terms of the business value that we are getting. So there could be a lot of matrices which we can put in, but as I said, let's put some fundamental matrices and let's put some transformational matrices which helps us to measure the business value out of the initiatives, be it a cloud migration, be it AI/ML, be it any digital initiative that we are putting as a part of digital transformation. Over to you, John.
Okay, no, that's good. As you were talking, I was just thinking of some of the targets and measures that I've had to work to, reducing OPEX by 5% year on year for 10 years and making sure that your roadmap and your technical approach does that. But one that really made a big difference for one company was it took them 9 months to stand up a project infrastructure environment. And they were amazed when they then could have a project infrastructure environment set up within 10 days. And that meant that they could drive a little bit more of run fast, fail fast within their organization. The big challenge to them, of course, was I think they had to put some personal controls on it so that they didn't have too many people starting up stuff and slowing it down. So they had to put additional measures in place. But these are the sort of metrics that you can then start to include. Any other comments from the others?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add to what Ravi did mention, and I'll kind of come back to this particular point, which is very pertinent, some from a business standpoint, which is user experience, and it's very, very pertinent and important that user experience matrix provides sort of ample information about applications that may not have been noticed earlier. These metrics rather expose sort of hidden issues that can hinder performance, including improper cloud setups, hidden dependencies on any other in-house application which have still not been migrated to the cloud. Then there are dependencies on internet overcrowding and lagging response times and so on and so forth. So that's very, very important. The other aspect is, several specific user experience matrix provides a clear indication of the project's success, including latency. You can talk about error rates. And of course, like Ravi mentioned, the CSAT scores. Now, of course, it has been migrated to NPS. There's no more CSAT, it's all NPS as such. Now, latency gauges the time it takes an application to respond to a request. Now, while the error rate measures how frequently the requests fail, and then NPS matrix expresses how migration in cloud computing may impact and affect customer service and relations. Now, as we know, in today's day and age, it's all about e-commerce, it's all about online PaaS systems, SaaS systems, and so on and so forth, right? So that is very, very important from the customer service viewpoint. Today's day and age, customers are looking for super quick responses. It's within like either minutes or within seconds. We buy something online, it needs to kind of be delivered within a half an hour, within like 15 minutes, and so on and so forth. So how does one sort of link and tag this, enable this as well? And that's where the user experience comes into picture. So in my opinion, along with the IT sort of matrices as such, one should have this business angle to it, user experience angle to it, and both go hand in hand, both go together. First, one needs to decide the business metrics and then go into the technology metrics on how do we enable those business metrics and targets and so on and so forth. So that's just one angle that I wanted to kind of bring in within this discussion. Back to you, John.
No, I think you're 100% correct there about that alignment of when the business asks for something, that you can go back to them and have the conversation about, and here's the other user experience metrics that could be impacted by the new system that you're asking or the new way of working, etc. So you need to have that sort of linkage in place. Next question, and we'll make this one to Mohammed. So how do you measure team performance, and how efficiently can you handle service requests?
Thank you, Mr. John, once again, and I apologize because I have an issue with my camera, so only I can speak. And thank you once again the opportunity for asking such a great question, how we can measure the team performance, because at the end, management see how you have make fulfillment about the request, because that one directly will giving the performance of your service, especially you as a service provider, and I am giving a service. So I need to measure how I can make the effectiveness, especially in terms of the time, because the time is most important, because once we are receiving as a SLA, which is mentioning like 99.9999, that means we need to provide the service. But how we can measure that? Because we need to have availability. Because in my experience, I have noticed, especially the cloud providers, they are giving the service 99.99999, and we are not noticing something wrong on that, but only the problem from the end user side. But that will be a challenging. But one more major question, the performance, like someone has been stuck in their technical things, like for example, there is some misconfiguration and that causing the issue to the service. So that kind of issues we cannot measure because that service has been affected. For instance, maybe like load balancer that not serving the service, that means there is a major downtime. But I have seen ever how we can tackle that, especially the time bound. The time when it is starting, there are some systems where we can log a ticket and exactly we are finding. But there is another layer or the channel which is from the service providers, especially the service technicians, those who are receiving the tickets, and they are trying to mitigate in between. If you have a directly sending to them and bring it back, ensure satisfaction with the user, whatever they ask for us. So overall, as per the management perspective, they want to see the result, how you make yourself fulfillment to the customer. At the end, we want to make customer happy. If customer happy means everyone is happy. So that is my conclusion, and back to you, Mr. John.
Okay, Ravi, Nirnad, if you got anything to add to that?
I think what Mohammed said is totally right. So on the team's performance, right, it's as simple as what are their KRAs, what are their KRAs built within the gamut of contractual obligations, right? Maybe it might be an SLA, it might be an OLA, organizational level agreement, or it might be a target that we have given in terms of the NPS score, as Nina talked about, right? So measuring the team's output against the targets that we have set is going to give us how the team is performing and what are the gap areas. And those gap areas then can be addressed using either the service improvement plan or various interventions. You might want to see how the team is flaring on the new ideas in terms of bringing the new ideas and then turning those new ideas in terms of productivity improvement, right? So there could be many measures and objectives that we can set up for a team. And those objectives should be aligned to our business outcome or the key goal that we are setting ourselves, especially focusing towards the customers and towards what we want to achieve as a team. I think those are key fundamental things that we need to focus on, John.
Just wanted to kind of add a different dimension to this discussion as well. Now, whilst we are talking about team performance, in the sort of the latest trends that we are looking forward to, and this is something which we have been living and breathing nowadays, rather than only a team performance, our teams currently are located in different geographies. People don't even meet, it's all virtual and so on and so forth. Somebody is sitting in the US, somebody is sitting in Australia, somebody is sitting in India, or probably, and of course the majority of our team would be sitting in somewhere in Saudi Arabia and so on and so forth, right? So how does one then evaluate the team's performance? So the new dimension is, rather than evaluating only the team performance, we evaluate the service itself, the service that we are sort of rendering. And the service, when I say service, it's the project that we have either in the process of implementing or just recently implemented. And to measure that particular service is something which needs to be kind of taken care of. Now, how does this help? If one decides to measure the performance of the service, now service could be how much downtime is for that service, whether it is like 0.001 or probably it is 0.02 or something like that. That is the benchmark that we have set. Against that benchmark, how much the service was available? Has it kind of met the benchmark? Is it over and above the benchmark, or it has really taken a bad hit? And that's where the entire piece comes into picture. So because there are various teams involved, there is an infra team involved, there's an application team involved, there's a security team involved, and ultimately, of course, the big daddy, which is the business team, of course, is involved in this, right? So if we measure the performance of the service itself, all the teams taken together, they also come under the bandwidth and the ambit of this entire piece, and automatically they also get sort of their performance is also then taken care of, monitored, tracked, and then of course evaluated as well. So much important aspect is, in addition to the team performance, the performance of the service is very, very pertinent and important. I hope that kind of brings an understanding to the audience. Back to you, John.
No, that it does, and the only thing I'm left to maybe add to this is it's also how the team reacts and deals with change. Because as you start to use start to manage and control a hybrid cloud, there are more changes that are coming along, new systems that are coming along, and it's how quickly and rapidly they can adapt, absorb what the new environment is, what the new baselines are, and then work towards the new targets that are being set up. Because normally it's not a large project that's going to take 3 or 6 months. Some of these things are coming in on sort of monthly basis. So they need to be able to adapt and adopt to that. And I think that's another target or vector or perspective on how you need to look at the team's effectiveness. So thank you all for those contributions. How can we improve the customer service KPIs? And this goes back to Ninad's points about the customer perspective. But how do we improve customer service KPI metrics against the customer expectations? So Mohammed, I know you've got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you once again, our eminent moderator, Mr. John. In terms of the KPI, because we have to see the performance from start till the end. I have always taken that consideration whenever you're doing a project, means you are starting and keeping ending. So KPI is against to that, because whatever the key performance indicators you are measuring, that give you the proper result oriented at the end. Because, for example, if you make yourself satisfactory of your service, that KPI is measuring against what you have started. So at the end is a customer satisfaction which easily we are measuring. It's easy or it's difficult, or how you have tackled that issues. But when it comes to the process, most of the enterprise application, which is giving you the remedy ticket and somebody is manually entering to the system, and that measurement we need to make it. I have a challenge on that, especially when it is come for the measurement of matrix when you are making in the KPI, while you are sending an email or phone or chat, social media or voice. This I'm talking about as a enterprise solution. So in that, how we can measure that KPI? If you take an example, have you ever tried the KPI against the service which we are getting in the social media? Because in the back end, I understand that kind of things. Maybe it is giving a worldwide service which required you to be available all the time. Like earlier, I have mentioned 99.9999. So that kind of facilities we are receiving, especially some kind of a service. We can give example of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but that kind of service we are getting from the customer perspective. So most of the users, they're understanding by themselves, but not getting the service which we are looking. So at the end, we need to make ourselves how we can measure the KPI. The KPI will be in terms of our artificial intelligence as well as the human which we are entering. But at the end of the day, my belief is that we need to keep service as much as we can available for against the KPI. And in a nutshell, so performance, we need to measure the human against the artificial intelligence and how we can make that automation. So KPI will be observed by the service provider. That's it. And back to you, Mr. John.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any additional thoughts from Ninad or Ravi?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to kind of add to what Mohammed also mentioned. Now, in my viewpoint, and again, I'll draw back a parallel wherein in the new age technology and the business, there are sort of 4 key points here. First being, and this is pertaining to the customer service and the experience and the improvisation of the same. Now, first and foremost, we need to one needs to understand the customer feedback. So there is the first metrics, which is customer feedback metric. The second being the service efficiency metric. The third being the quality, consistency, and the compliance metric. And the fourth being employee engagement. So the first 3 are obviously external facing, but the fourth one is internal facing, which is employee, how the employees are engaged in the customer service perspective. That also matters a lot, because they're the people who interact with the customers and they need to engage with the customers as such. And the fifth element, which kind of combines these all 4, is all these things taken together should be in real time, So that's the most fundamental element. It has to be absolutely real time. We can't be saying that, all right, we'll come back to you after a couple of hours or come back to you after 24 hours and so on and so forth. So how does, to your point, John, wherein you asked about how does one improve this entire piece, So that's where the improvement comes into picture. It has to be quick. It has to be real time. It has to be within the minutes and seconds. Otherwise, we've already lost the customer. There are hundreds of other competitors which are there to just grab that mind share and that customer as well, right? Now, from the solution standpoint, if we are able to sort of first of all understand and create these metrics, feedback metrics and so on and so forth. And then we track and monitor using the NPS, CCS and CES and the various types of measurement tools as well. That will certainly help improve the mechanism. And I just wanted to kind of give an example of our own organization. In fact, a couple of years back, we embarked on this particular journey of improving our own customer satisfaction scores and the NPS scores. And what did we do? Starting from business side, we in fact also spoke to a lot of customers, engaged with them, understood their feedback, understood their needs and requirements and wants, and then embarked on planning the entire customer service mechanism. So it's very important for us to kind of plan, and it's very pertinent for us to engage with the customers, understand their needs and requirements, and then go about changing whatever needs to be changed within our system to make sure that we improve our score. So we were sitting at an NPS score of almost around 50 odd basis points now. And post this implementation, our NPS score is now hovering between around 88 to 90%. That's quite a big jump. So that's just an example within our industry, because we are also a service-oriented industry anyway, right? Healthcare. So it certainly helped us. I just hope that this would certainly help the audience here as well. Back to you, John. You're on mute, John. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Very good point. The employee angle. One of my clients, they thought we were very good around customer satisfaction. They have about 5 million customers in the UK. But one of the things that they had a problem with was they were employing people who were in the front line, and they found that through time, people were staying for maybe a day or 2 days once they got on site. So that they might interview them for 6 weeks, they might train them a bit, and then suddenly a couple of days later, they were leaving. And that was because the technology that they were using was so outdated. So they'd come out from school, from education, they knew about the new Windows system, and they were being thrown in front of an older version of Windows. So the employee satisfaction has to be part of that building block structure that you talked about, of those 5 sort of pillars. So thank you for that. Ravi, any last point from you on this question?
I think most of it is covered. I would just say two lines probably on this. One is the customer journey and the touch points, right? So how's the overall customer journey that we have, be it internal or external customer? And what are the various touch points? Is it through a chatbot? Is it through a web? Or is it through a call? Now, every touch point, if you look at, can either increase or degrade the customer satisfaction. How do you identify those bottlenecks, and how do you act on improvising those bottlenecks? Even on the chatbot, if the chatbot is just giving you standard response, your customer is not going to be happy, right? You'll need to make it more, I would say, real time. You would need to make it more smarter to respond. So those are the things to improvise.
Thank you. So as we're getting close to the end, one last question to all of you. What would be your key action that you would suggest for our audience? And let's start with Ravi.
Yeah, okay, thank you once again. The key action point is, as I remember, one of the quote from the leaders, one skill set not fit for all, one solution not fit for all. So we need to go with the option that can be easily adaptable, and at the end perspective is to measure the one size fit for all. There is a policy, so we need to apply that. And at the end, we need to do as much as we can and I have seen something while you are doing as a unique service, the product or the service by itself will sellable to you. So we need to give some kind of a uniqueness, like most of the providers, the cloud, they have all similarity, but we need to give something different than the other cloud provider. So that makes the changes. And thank you for this opportunity, being a part of this panel discussion. And back to you, Mr. John.
Ravi,
Sure.
what's your key takeaway?
I think from the context of this particular panel discussion, I think the key suggestion for the audience would be that if you really want to measure or put up some matrices which measures or which tells you, whether you are in the right direction or not, I think it's very essential to first set up the framework in terms of value framework. What is the value that you are trying to drive out of either a cloud migration or any other initiative that we are talking about? And that framework should have those fundamental matrices in terms of cost saving, in terms of customer satisfaction, in terms of the experience, in terms of productivity, maybe operational resilience or business agility, whatever becomes important to you and whatever is aligned to the business objective. So your business objective, your IT objectives, and the matrices that you are putting in should marry to each other, should match to each other, and you should have the right data in order to measure them. That's my key takeaway.
And Ninad.
Thank you, John. Just wanted to add a couple of points here as key takeaways for the audience. The first being, it is very, very critical for all of us to ensure that we bring in the customer as a first approach into this entire piece of activities. Keep the customer in the focal point. Design all your tasks, your actions, your efforts around the customer, whether it is customer acquisition, whether it is customer experience, whether it is customer expectations, and whether it is customer service and delivery. Let's keep in mind that customer needs to be the focal point. Without the customers and their desired expectations and their satisfaction, companies probably may not be able to evolve themselves and grow faster. I have seen so many companies who have successfully grown by multiple magnitudes. The only reason that they were able to kind of get themselves in a very steep growth curve is because they really went after the customer in terms of their needs and requirements and design everything around this customer. So the first key takeaway is obviously about the customer focal and customer first approach. The second aspect and more pertinent is in today's day and age, earlier traditionally it was all about customer acquisition. We all know about that. However, trends have changed, times have changed. No more the customer acquisition is no more the focal point. It's all about customer retention now, right? So it's more important for everybody, all of us, to make sure that we retain the customers that have been acquired. And if you look at this new adage of the online companies, the e-commerce companies and all, once they acquire the customers, in traditionally their job was done. Now, no more is the case. They need to retain the customers as well. And the entire matrix is now revolving around customer retention and not only about customer acquisition. So that's the couple of key takeaways that I wanted to kind of discuss and put forward to the audience. Before I go back to John, thank you so much to the entire team here. Thank you so much to my co-panelists here. And I hope we were able to kind of provide you insights to the audience that they were looking forward to. And of course, finally, thank you so much for the summit organizers here for inviting us back again. And back to you, John.
That's great. Thank you, Ninad, and thank you for your thanks as well. I think the only thing I would add to everything that's been said as a key action is to make it to make sure that you allocate somebody to look at the measurement and the performance as an individual role, and not to spread it across the IT function or your business functions, because I think it's an important thing that you need to have that focus upon. So I think we've used up our time now. So Roger, is there any questions for us?
Not at the moment, John. I don't see any questions, but in case they are, we would definitely go ahead and send them to you all, and you can go ahead and take those questions later on.
That's excellent. So thank you, panelists, and thank you, Roger and Bridget, for inviting us here today.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, dear panelists, Mohammed, Ninad, Ravi, and of course, John, for wonderfully moderating panel. And thank you, all of you all, dear panelists, for sharing your valuable thoughts around this topic today. We truly appreciate your presence here, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So what a wonderful and power-packed day one has turned out to be. And I'm sure we all have learned a lot from what we heard today on the insights, the trends, the solutions, and the future and predictions for what lies ahead. For tomorrow's session, we once again have an exceptional lineup of some of the brightest minds from the industry, KSA and GCC speakers. So kindly do not miss the last day of KSA Cloud and Cybersecurity Summit, tomorrow between 2 to 5:30 p.m. KSA time. The event link will remain the same as today. Let me quickly take this opportunity to thank our partners, our platinum sponsor, Oracle, and our technology partner, Nutanix. And last but not the least, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Without your continued support, we would never be able to put on such an insightful event like this. So thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. See you tomorrow and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye-bye.